The United States bankruptcy and the exemption system, understanding your credit rights. The U.S. declared bankruptcy and pledged citizens as collateral. When the United States declared bankruptcy, it pledged all Americans as collateral against the national debt. In addition to this, the government confiscated all gold, effectively eliminating the means by which citizens could directly pay debts. However, because the government assumed legal responsibility for providing an alternative method of payment, it introduced what is known as the exemption, a system that theoretically exempts individuals from direct payment obligations by providing them with an alternative means to transact. Your credit as payment, the creation of bonds. In practical terms, the government issued each American a form of credit. The value of an individual was and continues to be calculated through actuarial tables. At birth, bonds equivalent to an average value currently estimated between $1 and $2 million are created. These bonds are collateralized by the individual's birth certificate, which becomes a negotiable instrument. These bonds are hypothecated, meaning they are traded and leveraged until their value becomes virtually unlimited. The credit created from this process is technically and rightfully the property of the individual. Under this framework, one should theoretically be able to access this credit directly. The exemption account, identified by a unique 9-digit number, one Social Security number without dashes, functions as an exemption identification number, EIN. The straw man, a corporate fiction blocking your access. Despite this system, legal barriers have been implemented to prevent individuals from directly accessing their own credit. The most notable of these is the straw man, a corporate entity created using an individual's name in all capital letters. This entity exists as a debtor, like all corporate bodies under the national bankruptcy. The straw man is not the individual but is instead a trust for which the individual unknowingly acts as a trustee. As the trustee, the individual is legally liable for any debts incurred by the straw man unless they establish administrative control over it through a security agreement. Upon securing such an agreement, no other entity, be it a court, government agency, law enforcement office, or financial institution, can interact with the straw man without the individual's express consent. This legal structure ensures that courts require an individual's consent before prosecuting their straw man, as courts themselves operate as corporate entities that can only interact with other legal fictions. The Federal Reserve and the role of private scrip. In its contract with the Federal Reserve, the United States agreed to use the Federal Reserve note, a private, copyrighted currency, for all public and private debts. This currency can only enter the public domain, the corporate economic system, through chartered banking institutions or pass-through accounts, one of which is the Social Security account. Any attempt to introduce money into the public sphere outside of these mechanisms may be legally classified as money laundering. The greatest scam, using your credit without your knowledge. Under the current system, all value is generated through lending because the government removed money, gold, from the equation in 1933. In this debt-based system, only living individuals whose value has been monetized through bonds collateralized by their birth certificate have the ability to generate credit. However, banks, as chartered corporate fictions, are granted an exclusive franchise to create and manage credit. When an individual applies for a loan, they are required to sign a promissory note. The bank then leverages this note, using the individual's own credit to generate the loan. Contrary to common belief, the bank does not lend its own assets. Instead, it draws upon the credit of the borrower. Despite this, the bank still demands repayment of both principal and interest, a practice that constitutes fraudulent misrepresentation because the full nature of the transaction is never disclosed. In reality, banks endorse promissory notes just as they would a check, depositing them into special demand-type accounts and then recording the transaction as both an asset and a liability on their books. This concealed process is why all loans, including mortgages, credit cards, car loans, and lines of credit, are inherently fraudulent, because no lawful contract can exist unless all material terms are fully disclosed. Accessing your credit, the fight for financial freedom. Despite the systemic barriers, A growing number of Americans are working to lawfully access and utilize their credit for financial transactions. While the government was legally obligated to provide a means of payment, it never explicitly taught individuals how to access their own credit. Consequently, patriots and financial researchers have dedicated years to uncovering legal and administrative methods to reclaim and use this credit for their personal and financial well-being. However, this effort is met with resistance, as institutions benefiting from this system actively seek to suppress such knowledge and prevent individuals from exercising their full financial rights. Conclusion: the ultimate deception. The debt-based economic system operates on lending as a means of discharging, rather than paying, obligations. This system hinges upon the use of credit, which originates from the personal worth of each individual and is collateralized by their birth certificate. Through the exemption system, individuals technically hold unlimited credit under HJR 192, which was designed to compensate for the government's confiscation of gold. However, government entities and financial institutions have systematically obscured this reality, leading individuals to act as sureties for a debtor fiction, their straw man. The end result has been a collective amnesia, a loss of knowledge about one's true financial standing as a creditor. This is the ultimate deception and fraud, a system that forces individuals to unknowingly surrender their own credit while enriching the very institutions that suppress their financial autonomy.